Da ashkem dim lip al yagum. Da ashkem dim lip al yagum. Oh, whoa, ho. Nenza dip han lacha. Den a lip al yagum. Oh, ho, oh, whoa, ho, ho, ho. Da ashkem dim
They used basketry and everything. I like to tell the story about, I don't know if it's Joe or John Adivasio, had written an article for the Boston Globe. He said that humans were living in caves and the women learned to weave, to collect berries, to make, and they learned to make clothing, they learned to make everyday objects, and the men learned to make thatched roofs. And he said it was such an important step in human civilization. And I really liked that story. And then, because I was feeling kind of possessive about basketry, then I happened to go from there to Toronto, where they were having a basketry symposium, and it was called Basketry Focus. And here were people from all over the world. There were people from Germany, there were people from Norway, there were people from Japan, from Taiwan, they were from South America. And it really made me realize that basketry was just not North American, which I had been thinking of as our art. And so it really opened up my eyes, and from then on I felt more comfortable teaching other people how to do basketry.
Oh, whoa, ho.
The Ts'msyen woman I learned from, she came to take my mother's class, and here she was weaving and her fingers were moving so fast. I said to her, "Flora, why are you in this class?" She said, "Because I don't have any red cedar bark. I need cedar bark, and I knew I'd get it in this class." So I said to her, as soon as she went out the door, because I didn't want my mother to know what I was saying, I said, "Flora, could I learn Ts'msyen weaving from you? Because you're weaving right side up, and it just doesn't make any sense to weave upside down." "Okay," she said, "but you have to get me bark." But Flora was such a good teacher. She really went slow. She just did every little bit so I could understand it.
I didn't have weavers in my family that I know of. It certainly wasn't in the 2 generations before me, so I had to go out and seek my teachers. I first learned how to weave from Dina Nelson and Caroline Lucky. I then learned how to harvest the bark from Naomi Leask, a good friend of mine. And then when I met Holly a year or 2 ago, she was living in Metlakatla taking care of a friend's place, and I just kind of threw myself at her and said, "I want to learn from you." And graciously she let me come into the home and learn how to weave from her. And then she realized that my hands weren't moving the way I wanted them to, because in my mind Haida is backwards, and I didn't notice that, but she did. So she introduced me to her mom Delores, who knows how to weave Tsimshian style weaving. And once I turned myself around and I started going clockwise, it all just clicked in my head, and I've been weaving with those 2 ever since. So traditionally, weaving was passed on from grandmothers and mothers and aunties to the children, the grandchildren, nieces. But nowadays, I think with modern technology and people having busy lives and jobs that take up their entire day, it's hard to get that knowledge passed on from one generation to the other. And a lot of those ladies who did weave as a full-time job, they're not here anymore, and so that chain of knowledge has kind of been broken. kind of like the language. Some of our just phenomenal weavers that we no longer have with us are ladies like Flora Mather, who Nani learned from, Dora Bolton, Lucy Rainman, Lillian Buchert, Violet Booth.
Who are some of the people here in Metlakatla today who are weaving?
Roxanne Leask, Linda Ray Shear, to name a few. And there are a few people in my generation, like Naomi Leask and Ariel Horn, myself, Annette Topham, and it's, like I said, it's very few. So we're really trying to create another young generation of weavers and to create a young new group of teachers, not just weavers, but teachers who can then hold their own classes, be implemented in the school systems, teach, we've got Annette and Karla here, and they can start teaching in their communities as well to Tsimshians there. So we really want to make sure that this style of weaving survives and that the language that goes along with it as well survives. The Haayk Foundation is the local nonprofit organization that David Boxley, Gavin, Hudson, and myself started just over a year ago, almost 2 years now actually. And our main goal is to help preserve, promote, and revitalize the Sm'algyax language of the Tsimshian people. And through this project, we're going to be not only preserving the weaving style of Metlakatla, but the Sm'algyax that's going to go with all the terminology of weaving a basket as well.
I learned how to weave from my grandmother when I was a child, probably around, 10, 11, 12 years old. I was raised in Seattle, and when one of her trips to Seattle to visit us, she brought some cedar. She sat down with me and my cousin Karina, and she went ahead and just taught us weaving with red cedar. I've woven on and off since then. I had to learn a lot on my own. I also have an older sister that has taught me a lot, so I've learned quite a bit from her through the years. But I feel like I've kind of been an independent weaver, just trying to experiment on my own and figure different things out on my own, or kind of learn by looking at other baskets. So I was grateful to have this opportunity to be a part of this project because I value cedar just like everybody else in Southeast Alaska, and wanted to represent my grandmother, Violet Booth, who taught me. I think with my grandma, I like to think that maybe she just had so many kids, and it was during a time, they were growing up in a time where I think traditional culture maybe wasn't as valued as it is today. A lot of the aunties did not learn the weaving. If they did learn it, I think they learned it later on in life at opportunities that just kind of arose, like in the form of a class. Granddaughters, my auntie's children, my uncle's children, I think we're the ones that were able to either see the value or gain the interest in weaving and ask to be taught, or our gram just made the decision that she was going to teach us. I value the weaving because I feel like it puts me in touch with my grandmother, it puts me in touch with my family, it puts me in touch with my ancestors, and you can kind of, you get to kind of travel back in time when you go and you gather the cedar and when you process it and when you sit there and weave. And sometimes I feel like I was born during the wrong time. I wish I was born way back when.
When you're raised by grandmothers and mothers that are in the forest utilizing the forest as basket weavers are, so from a very early on age, before you even get to take bark off of a tree, you're taught how not to run around, how to conduct yourself in the forest, that the floor of the forest has as much importance as you yourself is, that you're to show the respect to it. And so when we're youth, young children, my grandmother would take us out and we'd harvest the bark, and she would have a gratitude, a communication to the tree on how she was going to utilize it.
I went out with my mom. My mom basket weaves, but I just kind of watched. I didn't really do anything. I've never really weaved, so this is my first time. It's fun.
I have never harvested and processed bark, but I have had the opportunity to watch, listen, and a little bit of basket weave with Lillian Buchert. She was my nanny many, many years ago. So she would allow us to do some baskets and teach us and stuff. But a lot of that is probably my passion of why I want to do it again.
I just remember being little, going out and helping, like carry bark for my great auntie Brenda White. And I went with my grandma a couple of times. And then my mom.
And have you woven twine cedar bark baskets before?
Only two. Yeah, two really small ones. I've done a lot of headbands and bracelets and like really easy stuff like mats. But that's about it.
So Delores will help you take it up a level.
If some of them,
Yeah, I hope so.
My father is Jack Hudson, and his aunt was Lillian Buchert, a very prominent basket weaver in the Metlakatla community, Ts'msyen community. So when I was young, I would come visit my dad and my sister, Becky, as well. And my aunt, Lillian, one of the first things that she said to me was, you have to learn to weave baskets. And at 9.5, we sat there during the summers, and she taught us all of the basic weaving techniques. She taught us how to do some false embroidery made in hair fern. And then she passed away. And I didn't do a lot at home when I was younger, but I knew the basic concepts, and my Aunt Lillian taught my sister-in-law how to weave. And so she sort of bridged that gap when I was older and I had questions, and I was starting to, get into it and wanted to know, what do I do here? My sister-in-law, Shannon Hudson, she knew everything. So this is the first time that I've harvested cedar bark, and I was very excited to do that, to be a part of that process. My father has a collection of baskets from all these amazing Ts'msyen basket weavers from Metlakatla, and he has collected them over years, and we all learn a style. And as you mentioned, that there's, everybody has a way and a style, but then even from person to person, you can look at these baskets and just know whose is whose.
Yeah.
if people could realize that basketry and the language makes them, it's really, it makes them uniquely Ts'msyen. Mm-hmm. Their style of weaving and their language makes them uniquely who they are.
Right, the two are intertwined.
Right.
Just like basketry.
Right. Feels like it's thin all through Then you take that second word away from you. Put it on the form for a little while and you rub it with your,
And you're just going to
similar.
Or maybe instead of
Da ashkem dim lip al yagam. Oh, whoa, ho. Nanza dip hot macha. Then I